What's good with it, RIZZLE fam? Unfortunately, it seems like we're at the end of an era, or at the very least, the end of a really good remix series. See, for whatever reason, the remix series that Knowledge was working on got hit with a few copyright strikes, and that could land him in some seriously hot water if he doesn't stop making the tapes. Unfortunately, he had permission and everything, so the whole thing doesn't really make any sense. That being said, there are a few theories floating around as to why the copyright strikes happened, and Knowledge really isn't happy about the whole thing. And did Meek really had some part to play in all this? So, Glen Earl Boothe, better known as Knowledge, has been releasing some seriously critically acclaimed tapes since about 2010. He's known for taking influences from genres like jazz, old school hip-hop, and soul. His lo-fi aesthetic has done huge things for him in the underground, and his input is nearly unmatched. It seems like the dude has put out new tapes pretty much every few months since he started. He worked with people like Earl Sweatshirt, Kendrick Lamar, The Alchemist, and plenty of other industry legends. He's even worked on music from some of the bigger names in the mainstream, like Meek Mill, which is kind of where our story starts. Back in 2017, Knowledge started a remix series featuring the music of Meek Mill, mostly using some of his old freestyles that a lot of people might not have been hip to before checking out his remixes. On January 9th, Knowledge announced on his Instagram that the series is over since he can't keep up with all the copyright issues, even though according to him, he was fully within his rights to be doing all the remixes and cleared the samples with all the label execs. So if he did his due diligence, what's the issue here? Why is he being hit with all these hurdles? Well, specifically, what he said about the whole thing is as follows. I'm not sure what's more idiotic, taking down music that's giving you more exposure, or simply not just knowing what a remix is. Really copyright striked a corner freestyle that I had permission to flip from videographer. The only reason I can think is because this one remix got more plays than bro has in the last 10 years. Either way, the Meek series is over with. Grab the tapes while you can. To all my heads keeping the raw remixes alive, it's only a matter of time till the art of remixing is fully dead. Be safe, get a lawyer, and thanks for always listening. Okay then. Basically, to break down what he's saying, it seems like he thinks the big reason the series is getting shut down is that Meek is jealous. Honestly, we can't even fault him for that kind of shade because, for real, people don't even really talk about Meek like they mess with him all that heavy these days. He hasn't been dropping heat like he did at his height, and as a result, seems like the dude is becoming less and less relevant. And to be honest, the way Knowledge is recontextualizing the freestyles is fire. The raps are usually hyper-aggressive, just talking on street, but the beats underneath give the whole thing a drastically different feel. The beats are drowsy, but pretty and jazzy. The beats are hazy.
The same old shit, got that crack music, listen, let your brain OD. I be playing no peak, being one of my niggas.
They feature instruments like a thick bass line played on stand-up bass, brushed drums, and a nice jazz organ, but Meek's delivery is smooth while being aggressive. It's like they took Meek in his prime and pushed the sound in a direction that Meek never really messed with. Knowledge also hints at something about this whole situation that's seriously messed up. Samples and remixes have always been important to hip-hop since the beginning, and even in the modern day, they done for a lot of small-time rappers that they could go on to boost up to the next level of stardom as a result. Just as an example, Chief Keef has always been a legend, but he wouldn't be anywhere near as popular as he was at his height if he wasn't for GOOD Music remix of I Don't Like. It just wouldn't be the same. What Knowledge is really getting at here is that remixes and samples, something the whole genre has basically built itself off of, are in danger. I mean, if you look at the roots of hip-hop, it's all turntablism. After that, Akai released the MPC, which switched the whole game up. Suddenly, you could easily sample bits and pieces of other tracks to build your entire beat around. From drum loops like the Funky Drummer to the horror movie samples used in all the Memphis rap stuff like 3 6 Mafia, it's just in rap's DNA. Without the freedom of sample, flip, chop, and screw, hip-hop isn't hip-hop anymore. At this point, copyright laws, IP legislation, and especially streaming are going to be the death of hip-hop. From the angle of streaming, that's another huge problem. Any mixtape, album, EP, whatever that contains uncleared samples can't show up on the platform. As a result, Death Grip's first album isn't on Spotify. A bunch of other mixtapes aren't there either. You ever try to hop on Spotify to try to listen to the early freestyler from one of your favorite rappers? Once you're there, looking for it, you realize that stuff isn't available. So you hop on YouTube, and then you realize that the upload you used to listen to got taken down. That's because whoever made the beat probably just converted a snippet from a YouTube video to a WAV file and dropped it into the beat. That doesn't fly when it comes to bigger releases. The best you can hope for making beats like that is if you drop it on SoundCloud, which is actually more or less friendly to musicians, and that nobody comes after you in court. But then if it blows up and moves to YouTube, it gets taken down immediately because you didn't get permission from the label that owns the track, and now you owe thousands of dollars. This happens a lot, and it's essentially the same thing that's happening with Meek and Knowledge. So why is it all so important? Why does Knowledge even care? Well, the issue is that the whole thing stifles creativity. The samples that a producer chooses are pretty much like a unique fingerprint. They select sounds from music, movies, TV, whatever, and all those samples are exactly what make them unique. That's why debates about whether or not sampling is music are dumb. It's an art form all its own. And sure, it's not somebody laying down a guitar line or anything like that, but the results are unlike anything else. If producers can't do that anymore without getting massive copyright strikes, there's no point in even producing anymore, unless you're posted up in the studio with actual musicians recording live parts. And that hasn't really been the way music is made since like the 70s. That's just not how the industry works anymore, especially not in hip-hop, R&B, or pop music. It's like the labels want to have their cake and eat it too. And in the process, the stuff on the radio is just the same established rappers all the time. It's gotta be people that the studios are pushing, people with money, people with access to the catalog their label owns. There's no room for experimentation or anything like that, and all these up-and-coming producers are locked into making completely original music, or not making music at all for fear of retaliation legally. It just doesn't work like that. It can't, or the genre is dead. Knowledge touches on that in an Instagram live he did where he talked about the whole situation. He wasn't doing the remix series for clout or anything like that. He did it because he grew up with those old freestyles, and something about the old Meek really spoke to him. He said, "Never thinking these would get plays. I did them because the verses moved me. I grew up with all these verses, lived and went to school in Philly with heads from Germantown, Southwest, and all around Philly. I always thought worst case scenario, Meek Mill could just use them as interludes or something. Not trying to gain fame off of any time. I just wanted them to hear my pain, G." Meanwhile, how he gets repaid for paying homage to someone who had a big influence on him is that he ends up getting stomped by lawyers and labels. He was just trying to introduce the world to someone who really inspired him when he was younger. He also says that it was bigger than that. It wasn't really for anyone. He didn't expect anyone to hear it. He was just making the remixes for the love of the music. One user called out a lot of Meek fans for pretending that just because they don't know Knowledge means that he isn't worth anything. He said, "Seeing some comments and QRTs on this, and it's weird how just because they don't know a Grammy-winning producer, motherfuckers assume that they're nobodies. Why you gotta know them for them being on something? Odd behavior." To be honest, yeah, like if they have a musical blind spot, that's not really so much on the artist as it is on the person who isn't hip to them. In other words, that's not the flex that dude on Twitter thinks it is. Another dude jumped to Meek's defense, calling Knowledge out for being so down on him when he was literally just hyping his freestyles up before everything went down. He said, "See, now he doing too much. Don't diss the man when you were just a fan. That's corny and emotional." To be completely fair about it, like, yeah, Knowledge has a right to be upset that his art is receiving some serious backlash for such a dumb reason, but at the same time, he didn't have to go in on Meek and get all aggro for no reason. That being said, it could definitely be the case that Meek had a hand in getting the copyright strikes put in the videos in the first place, so both sides have a big point. Is Knowledge in the right for calling Meek out for this whole thing, or is he tripping off something that Meek probably has nothing to do with? Let us know what you think down below in the comments, and if you're digging what you saw here in this video, be sure to check out this one too.